All right, hey folks, welcome back. This is Mark Devine with the Unbeatable Mind podcast, and I am here in Encinitas, California at our current SEALFIT headquarters. And you may have heard actually soon not to be. In October we'll be moving, but hey, that does not impact you. And today I have a really cool guest, a teammate, a Navy SEAL, Chris Ring. So in a moment we're going to I'll introduce you more to Chris Ring, and if you're a member of SEALFIT Online, you'll be able to actually see the video, because we'll have that at SEALFIT Online. Before we get started, can I remind you that if you haven't rated the podcast, it's very helpful for other folks to find it. And you can only rate it at iTunes. So go to iTunes and find the podcast. And then if you could rate it, that'd be cool. If you're not on our email list, go to our email opt-in at unbeatablemindcom/podcast. Then you can stay up to date on what the heck's going on around here. All right. And as usual, all sorts of cool things happening and new stuff happening around here. And one of them I'd like to announce is our new SEALFIT.com website. Just went live this week, along with the new SEALFIT Bootcamp integrated training program, which integrates the best of our mental training into a functional fitness program, minus the barbells. So if you can imagine kind of a blend of CrossFit, SEALFIT mental training, and P90X, that's what this is. It's like a video series you can follow along with me and my coaches training with some athletes, and but we've taken out some of the things that get people injured. So it's a pretty cool program. All right, so Chris, thanks for joining us. Chris Ring is, like I said, he's a teammate, Navy SEAL. We're going to talk a little about his SEAL team years. Spent about 10 years on active duty, tours in Afghanistan and Iran. Well, maybe Iran, but you won't be telling me about those. Iraq. And we're recently out doing some charity work. I met Chris just a few weekends ago when he came to audit the Kokoro camp and take a look at that and potentially become a coach for our SEALFIT Kokoro training. Chris, thanks for making the time today.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. So I'd like to start out, I don't have any canned questions. I like to have these things kind of flow and see where they go. But I always like to kind of get a sense for who the guy is in the early years. What were some of the experiences in your early life that kind of shaped who you are today? Where are you from? What was your family like? What was that like way before the SEAL teams?
So I grew up in Tennessee. I'm from close to Nashville area, a little bit about 50 miles south of it. So I grew up in very rural Tennessee. Grew up on a river. So as a young kid, I'm running through the woods all day long.
Nice.
Playing on the river, swimming around, shooting guns here and there, and just playing off my imagination, had friends over, and I'm the type of, back then, you go out all day until your parents are yelling at you at night to come back inside.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I just grew up, just being active, just being out in the woods and sports. Again, as a young kid, always playing as many sports as I could, just getting that.
What type of sports were you attracted to?
Young, I'd played pretty much everything, running, baseball, football. I even swam a little bit, which we'll get into later, obviously. But I dabbled in everything, basketball, dabbled in everything. And then as I grew up, I kind of started limiting to what down the road where I wanted to go. So at a young age, I knew I wanted to be in the military at some point.
Did you? Really?
I was just drawn to it. I like the whole lifestyle, just like.
Was your family, any military members in your family?
Nope, no one in the military. I was the first one. And there's something about I was just drawn to it. That just like the group of guys going out there together and just, overcoming obstacles and just working together in that teamwork. And the funny part was growing up, I knew I wanted to be in the military, but I didn't know what. But I did know for a fact I did not want to be in the Navy.
Oh, no kidding.
I was like, whatever it is, it's not going to be in the Navy.
Yeah. Because your impression was big gray ships.
Yeah, that's all I knew. I thought I was like, Navy, just going on the ships, and it's not my thing. I like, being around the water, but, out there. I'd want to be out. Growing up, I was in the woods and stuff, so that's what I wanted to do, be active and just on land. But then I one day just saw a documentary on TV about SEALs, and what really drew me to it was it had, I can still picture now, had a picture of the class starting out, and then what they were, how many graduated, and seeing the huge difference of how many were here to how many finished.
That's wild.
And it clicked right there. That's what I want to do. To seeing how challenging that is, and I want to push myself to be the best. Whatever's the best out there, that's what I want to accomplish, and that was it right there.
That very thing has inspired so many people. I mean, there was an element of that kind of inspired me even in my day. I went through well before that documentary? I remember what you're talking about. That was Discovery Channel?
Something like that,
The
yeah.
making of Class 226 or something like that? Or
I can't remember exactly what it was. I was like, 9 years old or 13.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but just sitting there and happened to be on TV. It was like, I just saw part of this training. I was like, that's cool. What is that?
Yeah.
And then I started watching it and I learned about it right there. I was like, that's it.
so that's when you decided. And what? How old were you when that happened?
I want to say I was 13 or less.
Really?
I was pretty young. I was still in grade school and stuff like that, but I was just, that was it. It was that
Yeah.
moment. So once I learned what it was, then I started reading books and researching what do they do? Because I saw that little snippet, but I was like, what makes it so difficult for has that all these, looked like big, strong men, and then finishing with so few of them. So I started researching what it entailed, what it took, and what they actually did. And I was like, all right, that's it right there.
Yeah. Your parents were aware of this fascination with the military?
They were.
Were they supportive, or what do they think?
They were very supportive, and they've always been, do what you want to do, but just be passionate about what you want to do, and then shoot for it.
Yeah.
So once they saw how passionate I was, they were behind me 100%.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one older brother. He's more the brains, I can say. He's the smart kid in the family.
He didn't go into the military?
He did not. He does like some contractor work for the military. He's a smart guy, but not in the military itself.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so you knew you wanted to become a SEAL once you saw that documentary. You obviously just kept doing what you were doing as a physically active guy. Did you do anything specific to train for it?
So, like I was saying, I started doing a lot of sports. And I started tailoring it as I got into high school. So in high school, I started off with football, swimming, track, and cross country.
Okay.
And then I got rid of the football and focusing on swimming and track. And I swam for 2 years, and then I focused on just the running aspect of track and cross country. So I went from that to reading about it, like how much endurance is involved. So I was comfortable in the water. I learned to swim when I was like 2 years old. My dad was a huge swimmer, so I learned really young. So I was comfortable in the water. I could do the swims. I was like, all right, let's move on to push something stronger and better at, and that was running. So let's improve that. And I just focused on all that because all those endurance sports is such a mental aspect whenever you're doing them, because you're, especially the individual aspect. So if you're on an individual race or like a swim or around a track for a distance, like you're in your head, you're the one pushing yourself. You may have like track members, like team members, and you're still fighting for a team, but you're still in your own battle for that portion.
I also did endurance sports, swimming, track, and then I got into triathlons. So I kind of have a sense for what you're talking about. But what do you think it was about those two sports in particular what did it do for your mind, and what changed in you that allowed you to endure the hardship and then, succeed at BUD/S? How did they help you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I really chose those two because I knew that was going to be involved in BUD/S, and being a SEAL was, swimming and running. But what really worked for me, or what helped me develop and become stronger, was the mental aspect of overcoming the difficulties, no matter what the pain is, whatever it was, of realizing what it was and seeing how far I could push myself. So a lot of those are time-based. So whether you're swimming or running, you're trying to beat that fastest time so you can realize the barriers and you have something to strive for. So I knew like how difficult I'm feeling now, it's going to be over at some point. This is like whatever distance this is, whatever time this is, every second is ticking by. And that's what something I applied when I showed up at BUD/S. I heard an instructor say, one time stops for no man. And that's something that stuck with me from that moment to for the rest of my life. And so I always thought about, no matter how painful or difficult this little piece of running or swimming is, that every second it's ticking by and I'm getting that closer to overcoming this obstacle. So this race, I'm running a 3-mile race, every mile's taken down, every step is something. So you just learn to keep pushing yourself and strive to overcome how difficult it is and be better every single time you do it.
And when you hit that wall inside your head, even if you're only like 3/4 of the way through an evolution or an event, what was it that you would tell yourself to kind of step over the line?
So I would focus when I was hitting that wall, and most common people think about how much they have left to do.
Yeah.
Like you're hitting that wall, you're like, oh crap, I still have 2 miles to go.
Right.
I started thinking about more how much I've already accomplished. I've already knocked out a mile. I've already knocked out this distance, and I start fractioning. And then I start focusing on not how far I have to go, but I start getting a rhythm for myself to keep going. So whether how your breathing is or how your stride is, and correlating, like connecting the two. So I started focusing on that at the now moment, not how far I got to go, but on the now. And we start focusing on the now. Shortly later, you realize how far you've already come again. Oh, wow, I've already done another mile. Oh, now 2 miles are behind me. And then you start, taking chunks at it. So people look at it, buds or anything as a big chunk, but you got to break it into the smaller chunks. That applies to anything you really do, from buds to races, small chunks.
Yeah, what I love about that, and it's kind of what's coming back to me, is that quote you just said is, the clock doesn't stop, but your relationship to time can change.
Exactly.
Right, and so when you bring yourself to the now, like you said, all of a sudden you're not focusing on the tick, 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 tick. And that goes away, even though the clock is still running, and you're in these timeless moments. And then, like I imagine, and we'll get to it later on the river, or it's like the 6 mile, swim we did in Buds. There's like miles that you just, or large distances where you miss it. You just are like, whoa. You come out of it and you're like, holy shit, man. I didn't even remember what the hell is going on for the last 45 minutes because you were so focused on something else.
And I think that's huge in an aspect, is losing yourself in what you're doing.
Right.
Because then it just makes time go by that much faster without even realizing it.
And do you think that is a skill that can be developed?
I think it is. I think it's something that, when people start off anything, everything's going to be difficult. Starting off working out. So if someone's worked out while they're getting into it again, so it's a bit of a struggle at first, but then you learn to adapt.
Right.
So I think it's all a process of just adapting and learning how to focus and lose yourself in that challenge or difficult moment.
Yeah. So what Buds class did you go through?
I graduated with 264.
264. And give me a time frame, like, what year was it?
It was early 2006.
06.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2006, so you were in for 10 years. So you got out and run 2016, about last year?
2015, yeah.
2015. So tell us a little bit about your Buds experience. How many guys showed up? How many graduated? What were the highlights and some of the shitty moments?
So that's the thing about Buds is like, it's when you're going through it, it can be so miserable at times, but it's one of those times, then you look back like, wow, that was some of the best times of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a lot of the difficult times that people experience. You look back and it kind of like molded you, who you are, and you look back and you appreciate how difficult those things were. And, again, like sometimes I was like, wow, this is miserable, but then a while later, like, oh, that was pretty awesome at the same time.
Exactly.
So it was one of those experiences that, you meet so many awesome guys. You can show up nervous and not really knowing anybody, but shortly later, then you're just got best friends all over the place, and and that's where the evolutions and stuff like that, they're going through the exact same thing you are. So that's just another boost. Like, hey, look over. If you're having a hard time, everyone's gonna have a low point in training and in life, and that's when you look to the guys and teammates around you, and they're there for each other. If I'm having a bad day on something like that, there's another guy there to lift you up, and vice versa. If I look over and he's struggling, boom, I'm stepping in. What can I do to help him push a little bit farther?
Swimming and running track are, even though they're team sports, they're very individualistic pursuits.
Absolutely,
What was it that clicked, or what point did you click and realize that you really, really had to be integrated into your team and focusing more on your team than your own performance at Buds? Did that happen pretty early for you?
It did happen.
Some people never get that, as you
it
are
happened
aware.
pretty early for me because, there's rollbacks in a lot of classes too. So you learn from them a lot. So you learn, like once I saw rollbacks come in and then they start giving you advice and you start to learn how things operate. And a lot of stuff at Buds too is you're doing it in boat crews.
Yeah.
So you learn early off you're only successful as a boat crew a lot of the time. So you learn most people should learn pretty quickly that, hey, if we want to be successful, this is a team effort here.
Right.
But that still involves you as an individual pushing as much as you possibly can. Because again, somebody's going to have a weak moment. So you're under that log and someone's starting to struggle a bit. Maybe you take a little bit more weight for a little while, then boom, they're back up, you're struggling. But if you're working together, it's so much more easier to accomplish it. So when you have that whole mindset as working as efficiently as a team, it just makes it easier for you as an individual as well.
I think the profound truth there that you just kind of brought out, and this is something that's lost on a lot of people, is, when you are in an elite team, you're working with your team so the team can succeed, but you're not taking your eye off your own performance. You're still optimizing your performance. You're still pushing as hard as you possibly can, but not at the detriment or not to sacrifice anything to do with the team's ability to succeed, at the mission. That's a fine dance. You know what I mean? That's kind of an interesting concept that a lot of people fail. It's like you can surrender yourself to the team, and then your performance can go to shit, and now you're not doing the team any favors.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's pretty interesting. So, what were the stats for your class? People always like to know that.
Stats for my class. I'm gonna be honest. I have a terrible memory on a lot of these things. I think we finished with 32 or 34.
Some of those guys were rollbacks for sure.
A lot of those guys we had a lot of rollbacks for every phase, obviously, and which obviously affects the numbers. But I can't think of the originals. Top of my head, I can't.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So I knew that. For some reason, that was burned in my skull, from my class.
I've had a lot of memory loss, so I can't be honest. Anything I say that date-wise, don't take with a grain of salt here, guys.
That's pretty funny. All right, so where did you go after Buds? What was your career like?
I went off to SEAL Team 2, so I went to the East Coast.
Yeah. And 2 operated back then in Europe. Did you get to do a tour in Europe? Or
I did not.
Straight to the war zone?
Straight to the war zone, went to Iraq first, came back, did another workup, and then went to Afghanistan after that.
Okay. So anything, what about those tours, Iraq and Afghanistan? What can you tell us about them? Did you see a fair amount of combat, and what type of missions were you doing?
They were both very active. Afghanistan a little bit more active than Iraq at the time, and they're completely two different missions. One's can be a lot more urban stuff going on. The other ones you're out more rural type of things. But they were definitely great experiences. Again, you just build throughout training. Even once Buds and SQT is over, you're still learning. You're always training all the time, always striving to get better. And I think that if you ever find a time in your life that you feel like I am as good as I'm going to get, then you need to move on to something else.
Right.
You're never settle. You want to always keep pushing to improve, not only for yourself but for the platoon, for the team, and so on. But the deployments themselves, they're great experiences that you learn so much. And you can train so much, but till you're actually in those moments on the deployments, you still really get that real world experience. Is definitely a game changer as well.
What was the scariest thing that happened to you?
Scariest thing that happened?
Either training or combat.
Well, which one? I guess.
Well, yeah, both. How about we do both? Yeah. I had some pretty damn scary moments in training.
I would say training was we were working with the SWIT guys. So we got on a C-130. We're flying up to Delaware in the middle of winter, and we're gonna jump out, hook up with the SWIT guys, and go take down a prison. We did all this, and it was like a week-long training or something like that. That was successful. Everything worked out, even though it was freezing cold. Probably the coldest I've ever been, middle of winter in Maine. It was Maine. Sorry. Middle of Maine. But one mission, we're practicing an extraction of somebody. So we had several different platforms, and I was on the water platform. So we're taking Zodiacs in to go pick up somebody important. And as we're coming in, our motor dies. There's some massive swells coming in. We're all wearing dry suits because it's freezing cold. Swells coming in, our engine dies, and we just go, Antarctica. We just flip over. And the thing with these dry suits, even if you think you got a lot of the air out of it, they're still buoyant, when you're in the water. So what happened was, the Zodiac came on top of me, and my dry suit prevented me from getting out underneath it. So I was stuck under the water, and I couldn't get out.
Holy shit.
And I was just tangled in, we had all this gear on there too, so I was getting tangled in all these straps. And I started to panic at first, because I'm stuck in this, I'm not getting out, I'm under the water. And I really started to think, this could be the moment that I'm drowning. I was like, all the times, I'm gonna do it in training right now. Just got flipped in a Zodiac, in cold freezing water, the worst thing imaginable right now. And I'm sitting there, and I feel like my lungs are burning, and I feel like, head just zoning in, I'm starting to lose a lot of vision, even though it's dark. And then I just sit there and I relax for a second. And I go back to the training. Whenever you're in some crazy situation, you go back to the bare minimum training, that's
Right.
whatever muscle memory is grained into you.
That
And
pull comp right there.
Like pull comp right there. So all I did was relax for a second. I just completely stopped on my back, like pinned up against all this gear, and I just stopped struggling for a second. I just stopped struggling. I just sit there, count to 3 or 4, and then all I did was just calmly, I was like, one way or the other, at least I'm gonna go try to find a way out. So I'm just calm, and I just started slowly moving, and then weird thing is when I was calm, stuff started shifting because we're in the wave still, and magically the straps were off me, and I just reach over and I feel another leg over here. So I just kind of slowly push myself to that, and I just gasp up at the last second, get all the air I need. But conveniently, the prop was still spinning right next to my head. So that was a close
Holy
one.
shit.
So the last one, you get your full gasp of air, the prop's zinging right next to you. But that,
Wow.
it's one of those moments that, no matter what's ever going on, it's one of those obstacles that you just got to realize, just relax.
Yeah,
And
I met
just zero your
most SEALs have some story like that. I've got my version of that too, where I got stuck in an escape trunk of a submarine, and my air just, I watched it just go ding, ding, and then I'm like on my last breath, and I'm just relaxing into it. And this is one where I actually had to rely on other people to help me out, and boom, all of a sudden the door opens, and I'm like, okay, I guess I get another day,
Yeah, which brings a good point. Like in pull comp, you think oh, it's all dive specific or drown proofing, but
Yeah.
it's so many different scenarios
So many,
that
yeah.
even in water or not. Like another one I got stuck when it was 15 foot deep. The buoyancy, we're doing an OTB, and the buoyancy in my ruck had popped. It was it had 3 UDT vests in there or something using it to keep it buoyant, and they had all popped, and it just sunk 15 feet deep, and it was the wrap had a slip knot, and it got stuck. So I was stuck on the bottom of it, and I'm here, I'm panicking, just getting churned around, but it's again relaxed. Got a knife out, was able to cut it, get back up, and go down. But there's definitely always those good training situations that you definitely learn from.
No doubt. The ability to calm yourself and relax in those most extreme circumstances. Now, the whole point of that training is to prepare for combat. So what was the pressure like, like on an ambush, or, were there situations where all of a sudden you felt out of control and then that same, training kicked back in?
Yeah, there's, for example, we were doing a route clearance trying to get to a location one time, and, by this point we had lost 2 vehicles to IEDs already, and it was a mission was originally supposed to be just 2 days, there and back, just to test this new route, to see if we can get there. And then day 3, it'd be 5 days instead of 2 days, but day 3, then my vehicle hits an IED, and there's rounds, you hear RPG just going everywhere, and you get to sit there, you're kind of stunned at first, but then you realize what's
You were in
happened.
a Humvee or
We were in the big RG, armored
Okay.
vehicles, so it goes off, you can't really see anything at first, it's all, dusty and everything like that.
Were those protected enough so that an IED would not kill anybody?
Yeah, everyone would be fine in
Everyone
our
was fine?
vehicle.
Okay.
Well, we ended up at medevacing a guy later on, but just wasn't anything physical, just he just got messed up from the blast a little bit, just kind of.
In the early days, the Humvees would have been
Oh yeah,
toast, yeah.
but in that situation, you want to get out and start checking, make sure everyone's okay. But then you go back to your training. Hey, first of all, we just did an ID. There could be other IDs around here. So you start thinking through the steps of what should you do next. What's the proper thing? Yeah, of course I want to get out there and make sure everyone's okay. But first, let's not cause
You
any
got
more
rounds
damage.
coming in too, right?
Yeah, let's not cause any more damage. You have to. Let's take a second. Don't get too hyped up. Assess the situation, and then make the best call from there.
Yeah. What about, what were some of the most interesting lessons in leadership that you learned from combat, leading through crisis situations like that, like an ambush or, a firefight?
Probably a common one was, Murphy's Law always is a thing that's gonna happen. We can plan for every possible scenario, and then something else that we didn't think was gonna happen.
Right.
So I think just learning to be flexible and don't take too much onto yourself. Do as much as you can, but also there's so many awesome people around you. You want to be able to rely on anybody for anything. So there's times that, hey, I want to be the one that does this, but maybe someone else is better. So understanding that leadership is more than just being gung-ho and charging forward, but bringing up those around you. So if you're an older guy in a platoon, those younger guys. And I learned, one thing you can learn is you can learn so much from everybody. You're not the go-to for everything.
Right.
So many people have different life experiences, have gone through so much or learned skills that way better than I can at some things. So learning that you're not always the best at everything, and that relying on others and learning from others, no matter your position, no matter your rank, you can always learn from somebody else and apply those things. And that's one thing that we worked well in our platoon, ever from the OIC down, was, this is what we want to do. What's the best way of accomplishing it? And then everyone has a say. Like, everyone can figure out, like, has an idea, has a strategy, has something, and then we can build off of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your biggest screw up?
My biggest screw up? Oh, probably so many of those.
I know, right? It's a long list for me too.
Biggest screw up? Man, that's a toughie. This was not well, I won't say that's a screw up on my part. That was just bad timing, but put me on the spot with that one.
We're not used to thinking of our screw
I know.
ups.
I like to learn from it and move on. And think about it again.
Don't dwell on it. That's part of that memory erase, right?
Yeah. Conveniently, I just forget all the bad things I've done. I've only done good things.
I'm sure that's
really convenient.
hardly true, yeah. That's pretty funny. Well, let's flip it then. What do you consider to be, like, the thing that you are really proud of most that you kind of left behind with the SEALs? Either whatever. What are you really proud of in that 10-year span in your service?
Just like I have so many flaws and so many screw-ups, there's still so many good things that you're proud of. And believe it or not, other than the team, I was at First Phase. I was a First Phase instructor after I was in Afghanistan. I would say I had some proud moments of seeing, as a proctor of a class, seeing training guys from seeing how they are day one to seeing how they are finishing training. To see how much taking a guy that maybe wasn't the best at first and then seeing him being the top performer in the class. So just seeing how much of an impact you can have on a new generation of people that are striving to become what we've become. That's their goal. And just seeing how much people can turn around, how much they learn of themselves. And a lot of things that I appreciated was, a lot of trainees these days come with this attitude that, not an entitlement, but they need to learn, like, experience things before they
need to empty their cup a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so seeing that happen, as well as guys acknowledging who they are, taking a step back, like, hey, this is where I am right now. How can I get better? And seeing the guys that strive, seeing the guys that went from being an individual to being the biggest team player in the class, type of thing. So
let me ask about that BUDS experience. Because I was never an instructor at BUDS, but through SEALFIT, we put thousands of students through kind of a similar type of training, which you saw. And I've surprised sometimes, both positive and negatively, about human nature.
Oh, yeah.
And so what were some of the things that surprised you as an instructor? Which, very different experience than going through BUDS as a student. You just obviously don't see things the same way. You have a completely different viewpoint of what the experience is as an instructor. So what surprised you?
So one thing I learned that surprised me when I first became an instructor. So when you're a student, you go through, it seems like complete chaos all the time.
Yeah, right.
All this stuff's happening. But getting on the back end of it, being an instructor, seeing how much detail, how much planning goes into every aspect.
Yeah, even the chaos.
Even the chaos. It's all controlled chaos in a way.
Right.
But as a student, there's so much going on. Your eyes are wide open, trying to take everything out, drinking from a fire hose, trying to take in as much as you can. And you think, wow, this is so crazy. And then on the backside as an instructor, it's all so strategic, such planned chaos that it's amazing to see what can be done and how the different viewpoints are on each side.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely. So you finished your career at BUDS, is that kind of?
I did.
And why did you decide to get out? What was the impetus for you?
So me, I was on the fence about it. I was at the 10-year mark. It's like, do I want to stay in? Do I want to get out? Do I want to do something while I'm young enough to try something new? And then I learned more about Legacies Alive, the nonprofit that I did the swim for. And I learned about, so two of my good friends are part of this organization. And I learned about Mike Vitti, one of the co-founders, who was doing the first challenge. So now this guy he was in the Army, he got out, he had this really successful job, and he's like, I want to keep serving in some aspect. These Gold Star families what can we do? And he quit his job, went up to Seattle, and it's like, I'm going to walk 1 kilometer for every service member that was killed in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Interesting.
Because we just stopped everything, went up there, and just started.
So you helped
hiking.
him out on that. Oh, you went with him?
I wasn't there first. So this is
Okay.
when I learned about
I see,
this
okay.
nonprofit, and Legacies Alive was made on his journey.
Got it. Okay.
So he walked down from Seattle down to San Diego, over to Savannah, Georgia, up to the Baltimore, and
By the
learning
way,
about
how many kilometers was that? Or how many steps was that? Was it, you say one step or
1 kilometer for every
one
service
kilometer
member.
for every service member?
Which obviously the numbers changes,
Yeah,
all the time. But so when he was coming through San Diego, I learned about what he was doing.
That's
you know, I was like, wow, this is amazing. You know, I like what he's doing. I like why he's doing it, and was kind of an inspiration for me. So just because then it clicked for me that just because I'm not serving in the military doesn't mean I can't serve in some other aspect. So I got to know him very well and what he was doing and help out with this organization. And one thing this organization does is extreme challenges to raise awareness for what a Gold Star family is. And a Gold Star family is a family that's lost a loved one in service to the country. So doing these extreme challenges to raise money, to meet families along the journey, connect them together, and just make sure that eventually our goal is that one day you can walk up to anybody in the street and they're going to know what a Gold Star family is, because there's tons of people that don't know what that term is.
Right.
So I was helping them, like, what could be this next challenge? What could be the next huge endeavor that someone could take on to raise this awareness? So I was helping mull over ideas, like, oh, you've done a hike. You know, what's something that not everyone has done before that's so crazy, physically, mentally demanding that could really draw people to it? Like, well, what about a swim somewhere? Then the Mississippi River came up, and I started researching. I was like, is that doable? I was like, research, like, yeah, I think that's doable. You know, that's something that can be done. And then that's when it clicked for me. It's like, all right, I'm getting out because this is what I feel I was meant to do, and was to take on this swim. And I told them, yep, I'll do that. I'll swim the river, even though I hated swimming. You know, I thought in buds, swimming,
You
I
were
thought was
done,
the worst
right?
thing ever. I hate more than
no.
any evolution. Swims were my downfall. Couldn't stand them. Couldn't stand them.
So you went after the hardest, nastiest thing you could possibly
Yeah, if you're
find.
gonna do it, go big. You know, just like
big,
when I was young, saw that video of that starting class number to finishing class number.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're gonna strive, you know, shoot for the stars. And it was like, if you're gonna do a swim, do the hardest one you can find.
Yeah, I mean, no one's probably even thought of swimming the Mississippi. Like, why would you want to do that? You know what I mean? I mean, not you, but why would anyone
I
else
wouldn't
want
want
to
to do it
that?
again. I would if I had to. But I
All right,
wouldn't
so
want to.
how long did it take to plan the swim? Like, what were the details, or how did it, come about?
So, me and a couple other team guys got together, and we started, really planning. We were the swim team dedicated for this organization to really do all the planning. So we started researching, the river. How long is it? What can you encounter? Which is really hard because planning for swimming something like the river is not very simple, which you would assume, because look, there's so many aspects of it. What are you going to encounter? What's the river like here? What's it there? How does it change all the time? What's the ship traffic? How do you overcome all these obstacles? So pretty much what we did, we just planned for everything we could possibly think of. We would sit late nights on a whiteboard writing things, get on the computer researching it. We're just making all these notes on
What were some of the biggest risks that you had to
some of the biggest things that we planned for the swim, dangerous-wise, was, of course, you're going to have the wildlife in the river. You got up north, there's nothing crazy. It's you got like some beavers and river otter, stuff like that. But then down south, you have snakes, you have alligators, you have bull sharks.
Really?
You have the bull sharks can live in fresh water for up to a year, I believe.
No shit.
So I remember the point in the river, I got to the point like, oh, this is where the northernmost bull shark was found. Okay, cool.
Great. So let's focus on the bull shark. Like,
Okay.
Did you carry a stun gun or something like that?
I didn't carry anything.
Nothing.
I didn't, nope, I
You
just
just prayed.
you pretty much left it for fate. Like, hey, if it's gonna happen, because the water's so dark.
You can't
anyway.
see shit.
As soon as you go in the water, it's black. So it's like, even if there was something in the water underneath, like it's really hard to. I'm going by feel at that point. And I was like, what am I gonna do? So, extra drag. Let's just swim, and we'll.
Did you
if it
see
happens, it
any
happens.
alligators or any sharks or anything?
Didn't see any sharks. We heard word of sharks down the river, like some boats or something seeing them, but never saw them myself. Snakes were on the banks. The alligators, a lot of times, so we'd take sometimes these side canals to get in and out of the river on this boat to get to the start points. We'd GPS plot where we start and finish every single day. And you would see their little trails and the bubbles from where they are under the water and stuff like that, but never
they're,
had any.
they're pretty much going to leave you alone.
They are,
They're
especially
focused on-
there's so much ship traffic down that way anyway that they're staying out of the middle of the river unless they
Yeah,
get across real quick, but they're not coming out there after. And that's what I figured,
Now, when you charted your course, the Mississippi's pretty wide in some areas, right? I mean,
It is. It's so crazy. It goes from like 12 feet across that you can walk to, I think at one point, because there's so many lakes on it as well. I want to say it can be up to like 5 miles wide at some point. Like
no
it's
shit.
3.5. Like there's some pretty substantial wide areas on there.
And you had a very specific route that you were trying to map in terms of like when you got to these big areas, these five, you just go straight down the middle, or were you trying to hug the side, or
It really
what was the
depends.
actual strategy in terms
know,
of? You're trying to stay in the. You couldn't stay in the center of the river because you
I
had the
tried
ship
to.
traffic.
I tried to. So,
You did?
So this is what you had to do. Like, so starting off, it was just me swimming and a guy in a kayak in front of me. And what
Okay.
he was helping me navigate obstacles in the water. Because the water starts off pretty clear. And then as you get farther south, it gets dirtier and dirtier because you get more factories and major cities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he was guiding in front of me. So when I was swimming, he's like when you're doing an ocean swimming thing, you get to guide off something.
Yeah.
So he was pretty much my guide. So if I see him start angling this way, then I'm starting to turn that way, or I'm avoiding something, or he'd be pointing out something when I'd look up at him. And he also hand me snacks and stuff occasionally. But so we start off. I'd be following him, and then we would plan it each day, one day at a time.
I see. Yeah.
So we would look at the map. We'd look at where we'd like to get to. What are we shooting for? Okay, say we hit there. If we have more time, do we want to shoot here? So we have like A, B, and C plans.
Right,
If we got to cut it short, this is where we want to
Yeah.
get to. So we would look at it. What are we encountering that day? And we kind of plan it as best as we could. So if we encountered a lake, we'd look at how long is the lake? What section of the day is it coming into? Am I going to hit this huge?
Yeah, you don't want to be in the middle of the lake and have it be the end of the day and then have to swim 2 miles
Exactly.
to shore.
Because believe it or
That's
not,
crazy.
that's the weirdest thing. Like you can look at, a map of the river and we're like, oh, it says you've gone 5 miles on the river miles on these canoe maps. Because
Right.
that's what we're using, canoe maps.
Right.
But then we have a GPS with us and the river map says, oh, you've gone 15 miles, but our GPS says you've gone 19 miles because there's so many switchbacks and bends
Right.
that you're swimming so much more than it actually says.
Interesting.
And up north, it's super swampy too. So that's why if you look at the internet, you kind of Google how long is the Mississippi River, you'll see anything from 2,350 to 2,550 because up north, it's swampy and the river changes so much.
Really?
It shifts around. There's parts I was swimming along and I could see like this grass, these huge weeds on top, but you can go underneath. But how the river flowed, so all these things shift around with storms and everything like that. Which makes at one point I was swimming along, I just smelled something so terrible going along. I'm like, oh, what is that? Something smells dead. And I run smack dead into this like skeleton deer, like just got tangled in this grass in the water. And we just bumped heads, and I was like, I'm gonna get some disease now, but I didn't. But so we'd counter a lake, like in the middle of the day, beginning of the day. We just kind of plan what's the best option. So if the river enters the lake at one side, does it come out where on the other portion of the lake? Because sometimes you enter it from the north and it comes out on the southeast or southwest. So like is it best to hug this side? Is it looped around, or you can swim more if you go around, or is it a straight shot? What's better? We would try to tailor it as much as possible. We'd try to shoot for the straightest line for anything, and even going down the river, we would stay in the middle of the channel until we saw ship.
Are there
traffic
any
coming.
locks in this?
There's 26 locks and dams.
26 locks. So you'd swim there, then you'd go around the lock. You
So
wouldn't
I would go up to
go through the lock, would you?
No, I was not allowed to go within
really?
the lock. So
Okay.
how it was, like it's super safety and just
Yeah.
how dangerous it was. But I would go up to the lock, and they have like a little ladder next to it. So I'd touch it, climb the ladder, walk to the other side, wait for the guy in the kayak. He would actually go in, they lower it, then I would go down the other side, and we'd continue on.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So which you had to plan into your day as well. So
Yeah.
which is so hard to plan a day. It's like, oh, I'm gonna swim. So we started setting for hours for time wise. Like if we didn't have an event, because the goal was to meet family. So
Yeah, so along the way, you're trying to actually go to locations where families can meet you.
Yeah,
too,
so the
like
whole point of the
villages and
swim,
stuff.
it wasn't for the achievement of swimming the river.
Right.
It was to meet as many families as possible,
Right.
to hear their stories and learn about their loved ones. So I would tailor swimming around that. So if I had a meeting early in the morning, I'd go meet as many families as I could, and then swim later in the day, or try to start early and go to a
How many
later
hours
at
a
night.
day would you try to get in?
So I would try to do 6 to 10 hours a day of swimming.
Mm-hmm,
Starting off, I'd get out and like eat on the side of the river, but I'm just sitting there looking at it. I was like, man, I could be making so many miles right now. So, so I started switching to I would just eat. I would just kick. I would sit on my back and just kick like a little fish, a little otter, and just eat. Like that way.
Turtle back and
Which made up some time. Of course, it's miserable because you're not getting out of the water. Not breather, but you're always you're moving.
what was your skin like? Did you get any sores and all nasty?
Surprising, nothing really. I had no major.
And did you get
skin
sick
issues.
at all from any
I
of
did
it?
get sick. Well, I did one infection up north. There's a lot of leeches up north. So, if I didn't catch them earlier on in the swim, then get them off, then they would be sucking on me all day long. So one was underneath I had booties on.
Yeah.
Underneath my booty, so I ripped it off in the shower, and it ripped him off, and it caused his teeth, I guess, got caught in there, got infected. That's only skin infection-wise, and that was just because of that. But farther south, as the river got more disgusting, I guess, because you have cities like Memphis, New Orleans, St. Louis that you're going through.
Yeah.
I'd start to get sick every day. Like I would just not like I'm
Like
not swimming,
stomach sick?
like stomach
'Cause
sick.
you
I'd
got
be swimming
some
along.
water and some of the nasty shit.
Yeah,
in there.
I'd be swimming along. All of a sudden, I get super nauseous. I'd just start vomiting all over the place. And then after that, after like a couple minutes of that, then I'd feel fine. I'd just start swimming again.
It's amazing the human body can just,
Yeah.
ward off all that
all right.
crap.
So I
And
feel like
you weren't
you're out
taking
now.
like C-packs every day to prevent, did you have any meds at all to prevent
I had some. So I had a doctor on standby that if I was starting to feel if I was hurting anyway, I started to feel sick anyway, I would call him up if I needed to and start giving my symptoms, and he would make a recommendation. Hey, do this or do that.
Yeah.
But there was nothing, different that I did to combat it. Maybe more probiotics or stuff like that, but nothing like all these antibiotics on standby, anything like that.
Nothing like that. And what was your diet like? What did you eat every day?
That was a good thing about swimming, because I still lost 30 pounds doing it, but I could eat, kind of like Buzz, you could eat whatever you wanted. Starting off,
There's only so much you could eat while you're on your back swimming, though,
yeah.
right?
So
You're not going to like have a tri-tip or something.
You'd be surprised when you get sick of food, what you'll manage to eat while swimming on your back. Starting off, I was trying to eat good. I had all these supplements. I was like, it's protein. I was just doing like these bars, all this stuff as possible. Then I was like, I'm getting so sick of that. If you're eating the same thing every single day, so then I started switching up to whatever I could get.
Cheetos.
We'd go restock on food. And I'm just like going down the junk food aisle, just piling it in, because I was hungry all the time
You just
too.
needed calories, yeah.
So I was swimming along. There's days that you see me. There's pictures of me just eating donuts in the water. Like I got Subway sandwiches. Just everything you can think of. I'm sitting there. If they could hand it to me in the water, I'm eating it.
That's pretty funny. You were probably burning like 15 or 20,000
I wasn't
calories
getting. I'd get in early in the morning. I wasn't getting out of the water till
just the
later in the
water
evening.
itself will suck you.
Because even if I'm not swimming, I'm still kicking. I'm still doing something, and that's a common misconception about the Mississippi River as well. Every time I talk to somebody, like, oh, at least you had a huge current to go with you. The average current of the Mississippi is like 1 knot, and that's only in certain areas. So you think you have 26 locks and dams. So there's a lot of back currents.
Yeah.
So the most miles I did in a day was like right over 28. But one day, I could do 28 miles one day. The next day, it took me an hour to go half a mile.
No
Just
kidding.
because of storms or back currents. There's one day that there's like 10-foot swells that we had to pull the boats out because it's so dangerous. Like,
Wow.
there's so much. It could be like the ocean out there, especially when it's super wide. And there's days that I can't see one side of the bank, and then like huge waves are rolling in. You're like, you feel like you're out in the middle of the Pacific somewhere, but
Yeah,
really
right.
you're just in this river, which I didn't expect. I'm thinking the river,
No
like
kidding.
nice and simple,
Yeah,
but
you'd think you'd be able to see the shore the whole time.
when there was current, it was super nice. I was making better time than fighting it.
What were some of the most memorable moments with regards to like the families you met and the impact you were having and the awareness and also the what it meant for these families that you would sacrifice
that's-
like that?
That's what really got me through, day to day. Is you really got to focus on, why I was doing something like
Right.
that. So like, it can get the most difficult part of it wasn't the physical aspect, probably the mental aspect.
Yeah, of course.
it, because you're swimming, you're in your own head all the time, and you run out of things to think about eventually. So you kind of got to zone out.
You're like, oh shit!
What am I doing
I've
now?
gone through the entire catalog in my brain.
So then you start focusing on, wow, my shoulder hurts. So then you're
Right.
thinking about how bad your shoulder hurts, but.
You didn't listen to music or anything like that?
I tried to. So there's a company that they waterproofed iPods, and I was testing some out. So if I broke one, I'd send it to them, and they make it better. So I was trying to, and then once it developed, the second half, I started doing like audiobooks and stuff like that too. Just to help. It didn't always work, but at least it was broken up the monotony of something. Sometimes I'm not following the story, but at least I'm listening to something different. But what really got me through today was we're thinking about my conversations with the families that I met. So. We had a kayak. The kayak that went down with me, every time I had the privilege of meeting a family, they would write the name of their loved one, a little message on there. So whenever I'm having a terrible, I'm struggling, I'm having a rough time right now, I'm feeling pretty miserable, I can look up at that kayak and see these names on there, and I realize, no matter how difficult this is right now, it's going to be over at some point. Like I'm going to get out of the water. I'm going to go be able to lay down and rest. These families have to live with their burden for the rest of their lives. So what is it for me to push a few more hours to overcome this day when these families there's nothing they can do about their loss and they're still dealing with it. So I was like, what's that? What's a few more hours? What's 5 more miles? What is that to that? So, and I would just think about the stories they tell me, and I want to, every time I had a meeting with a family, I'd run over what we talked about in my head a lot. So, that's what I think about. So I learn about a family, I think about when I talked to them, I didn't just talk about how they lost them. I learned how they were lost, but I also talk about the happy memories. You know, who were they as a person? What did they like to do growing up? What were their hobbies? You know, what are some funny stories? Just to keep that legacy of who they really were alive. So that's what I think about. You know, those families, just to keep it fresh in my mind. And when I'm swimming down the river, I would look up at a name and be able to like remember that story about that person that's on there. Who's that hero in the kayak? And I think about them, and I move through thinking about that story, who they were. Then I look at another name and be focusing on what family am I going to meet next? You know, what's the next city that I'm going to have a chance to meet some more families? But some of the most impactful things for me, there's one day that I swam. It was freezing cold out. You know, it was pouring down rain. I had a long day, and I got out of the river, and there's a family standing on the bank there waiting for me. And they just come up to me crying, hugging me, because I was just wet and disgusting. They're hugging me with tears in their eyes, thanking me for what I was doing. Like, even though I didn't know who their son was, the fact that I was still honoring him and ensuring that his loss, you know, his sacrifice is not forgotten. Right. That was impactful for me. And then having families that would drive 5 hours one way just to see me for an hour, and then you go home, drive right back.
How did they all find out about this?
So we would try to do much local media as possible, and there's other Gold Star family organizations in the area, like the Survivor Outreach Services that we got in connection with, and that they would hand us off state by state. So
how many folks do you think you connected with on the trip?
On the kayak itself, I have over 215 signatures, so that's just 215 that I met in person. Plus, there's numerous that I'll travel. Like there's one weekend that I went to the Iowa State Fair, so we packed up because the Gold Star families were doing a parade in the fair, and they asked us, "Will you come join us in the parade?" So we packed everything up, and I drove out there just to spend the day with all those families and having a good time at a fair, and then drive back and get in the water the next morning and go. So that's what I'm saying. That's the mental aspect. Besides being in your head all day, is like you're giving all this effort. It's physically demanding, and you're mentally exhausted. But you have to stay on top of your game, because when you get out of the river, you're talking to someone who paid that family paid the ultimate sacrifice. So if I get out of the water, I'm just acting tired and drained. Right. What good is that going to do? You're not going to help anything. So you have to make sure that mentally that you just kind of wake yourself up and realize what you're doing, and just mentally keep yourself sharp to have that conversation and remember what these people are talking to you about, and these awesome families that are sharing the stories of their loved ones.
That's amazing. And how did you determine where the finish line was? Was it the Gulf of Mexico when you saw blue water again?
You actually see a little bit of change there, but there's mile markers going down. So we use the canoe maps as well as like the U.S. Corps of Engineers. Their river maps as well, so they have like markers on there. So on the side of the river, occasionally you'll see little markers. So at the Gulf of Pass, it's called the head of passes, where the river kind of splits off into like 3 different directions. There's actually a little wooden platform there with like a mile marker 0 sign on there. So once
that's where the river starts on the south end, huh? So when you passed that, what did that feel like?
Man, it was so incredible for me. As soon as I finished, I look up, families from 10 different states had traveled down there to be at that finish. And you can only get to that location by boat. So I had all these awesome volunteers down in
New Orleans. Out there in boats waiting for you?
Out there in boats. So people volunteer the boats. We're trying to find, the organization's trying to find boats. All these people that travel down there, we want them to be able to be there for that experience. And so as soon as that was the most powerful for me. When I finish, I look up and I see all these families together on these boats, just having a great time, just clicking and bonding and just sitting there dancing.
Are the boats all kind of together, like one
they're all
big
kind of lined
barge?
up. We had some fireboats out there just shooting water hoses. People cheering, music playing. So seeing families from 10 different states just clicking and being able to have that mutual understanding of what they're going through, because they're truly the only ones that understand the pain and suffering they're going through. But seeing them connect and just having a great time was the biggest impact for me. As soon as I crossed.
And what was the first thing that you did when you crossed the line and finished, after you got out of the water?
So actually we, got up on top of that platform, got the American flag, held it up there, and kind of just waved to the families and talked to them, and then, kind of really enjoy the moment. Just seeing how happy they were made me even more happy.
Cool. Yeah.
Because they were there encouraging me all along the way. Every time I met a family, a lot of them, we'd keep tabs, keep in contact, and just seeing how everything was going. So having them share that experience with me was the biggest thing. And so I got up there, we got the whole team, because it's a team thing. I swam it, but there's other people that helped me get down the river too. I couldn't have done it with the guy in the kayak in front of me. The guy in the second half who was in the boat.
Was it the same kayaker who took you the whole thing?
Yeah. So I'd. We had a very small team.
That's pretty cool too.
Yeah, we had a very small team. So it was me swimming, a guy in a kayak, and a guy on land in a truck. So a lot of the time spent, that's why our days were so long. So sometimes we'd we'd have 3 vehicles. We'll load up in our vehicles, drive to the town, put our camping gear, whatever we had, like all with us, drive back up, start the swim, and try to finish. And we kind of bounce like that. So there's a lot of stuff on the front and back
Just
end
logistically, yeah.
of going with a small team. But the guy that kayaked with me, he came in 2 weeks in, and he did the entire way with me down there. So, without him, because he would be on the radio if we saw barges, because we had to make a decision, because I relied on him so much to guide me in that river. So he's the one to look out, like, all these ships are coming out here, like, because they can't just easily turn and get out of your way. They're massive barges.
Did they know in advance that you were going to be on the river?
The barges and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Some did. We met a lot of great barges that would pass it on. And we would let certain authorities know, hey, we plan on being between mile marker 784 and 710 between this day.
Yeah.
And they'd be on the lookout for us. As well, if we saw one, he would be on the channel letting them know, hey, this is us, we're here, what would you like us to do? A lot of time, because if we couldn't get them on the radio, it would take them like a mile to be able to move and turn those things sometimes. So they can't really get out of our way. I have to get out of their way. Plus, I don't want to mess up the normal ship traffic too. Everyone's got a job, everyone's trying to do stuff. I don't want to mess that up. So whenever we saw something, we would try to hug it out of the channel, hug one side or the other. A lot of barges, they would talk back to us and like, oh, no, you're good where you are. Or some ask, hey, do you need anything? We had so many ships that come up to us and say like, hey, can we help you out? What can you need? Or they'd pass us on. They'd be like, hey, look out for this going down the river and give us advice.
Very cool.
Which is super helpful.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fire departments and police that, like, through major cities, St. Louis is probably the most dangerous part of the river, that, they had giant, like, barge fleets out there, and the river's moving so quick through there that so many people will die in there because you can't get out of the way. So even if I'm swimming sideways right towards the river, if there's a fleet there, I can't necessarily get out of the way. So they had like, these ropes, loops on them, 2 fire boats that, if they saw that I couldn't get out of the way, then they're throwing these ropes at me to try to yank me to get out of the way.
So they went kind of alongside you while you were swimming through that?
So they'd block off other boats, and then when they'd one go up ahead to see what ship's traffic are coming up, they'd come back, let us know, hey, start shifting this way or start shifting that way.
Cool.
And one which is there for safety purposes in case.
So the team effort really extended to law enforcement, first responders, and all the big cities.
All those major cities
The
that
barge
came
traffic
through.
itself, the Gold Star families. It was all one big
It is. Even for
kind of
lodging.
intersected team, interlocked team.
So a lot of families that we met would open up their homes, so we'd spend the night with these families, or we'd camp on the side of the river, or people would bring us food and all this other stuff, to hold events for us. And
What an amazing
awesome.
experience. How many miles in all did you swim on that event?
I would say, it's hard to say, so I definitely did more than 2,350. I can safely say I did over 2,550. I definitely did over that.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, there's some days that,
You just had no idea how far you went with all the little.
based
side.
off of the mile markers and how our GPS would say, because we would lose our GPS sometimes, but we
Right.
base on the average of, for every 5 river miles, I'm doing 6 miles type
Right,
of thing, or
right.
7 miles, depending on how the turns of the river are. So based off of that, I know, plus the lakes, if you're having to start from a bank somewhere, swim out to get across the lake and then start cutting down, or if you have to get out of the way of barges, here I am swimming over here, then having to zigzag to back over there, so a lot of extra stuff is going on. So it's hard to say exactly, but I'm 100% comfortable saying over 2,550.
That's awesome. Well done. So, what do you think your next challenge is going to be? Do you have any ideas yet?
So for Legacy's Love, we try to pass the torch off to
Yeah.
the next person to do, and actually our next challenge starts next month.
Okay.
So a Gold Star mom who lost her son is going to bike from San Diego to the World Trade Center.
Oh, cool.
She's kicking that off on June 11th.
Okay. Are you going to be on the support team for that at all?
Starting off, I'm going to be on the support team. I'm going to try to go out as much as I can, because having a support team is huge. It takes so much stress off of the person doing the challenge if they know the team is taking care of them or everything's planned. So if you're doing the challenge and you have to worry about anything else, that makes your life so much easier. You're just putting more pressure if the challenger has to worry about other aspects of it. So yeah, that's my goal, is to make sure everything is as easy as possible for her to accomplish.
That's cool. And what do you think is in the future, for you? Like what's beyond, continuing to do work for the, this foundation or others, what do you think your next kind of area of focus is going to be career-wise, and what's in the future for Chris Ring?
Well, for Chris Ring, I would say,
The Chris Ring Show.
obviously, is continuing with Legacy's Live. You're saying is supporting a lot of nonprofit work as the easy answer. as much as I can to give back to these families, to keep serving that aspect of these families gave the ultimate sacrifice, so I want to do everything I can to keep serving them.
That's cool.
So as not just in any nonprofit too, because one thing about Legacies Lab, we will work with other nonprofits, because we're a small nonprofit, there's other nonprofits that can do stuff that we can't do. So let's go help each other up, be mutually beneficial in that aspect, and continue on and seeing how SEALFIT goes and helping out as much as I can there, and just trying to do
You
everything.
do some
really.
shoot training too with some of your teammates?
I do. We do like a lot of help with a company called Sure Shot, where
I remember Sure Shot. Yeah.
we do a lot of civilian. It's a civilian readiness company, so we train, in firearms, shooting, at-home defense, natural disaster preparedness. Anything training you want to learn, we can come up with it and do that.
Cool. Well, I certainly look forward to seeing you at the next Kokoro camp and having you jump into the fray in some controlled chaos.
I look forward to it.
That'll be awesome. What was your, that was the first time that you got to experience what we do, and we've been at that for 10 years, and Kokoro for me is a labor of love, but what were your thoughts after observing that?
I was very impressed with how everything is put together. From taking the concept of what you're not gonna go to Kokoro and be disappointed with the experience you're getting.
Yeah.
It's gonna be everything that you expect from it, if not more.
Right.
It's every training aspect of it is, you know where it comes from, you know where the basis of it, from this Bud's lifestyle, and then if that's your goal is to get that experience, then you're gonna get it by doing that Kokoro camp.
Yeah, well said. That's true. Awesome. Any final thoughts for folks who are listening? Any motivational thoughts or comments to help people kind of navigate their day or their lives?
Yeah, I would say
Pops in the head?
there's kind of two things I can think about. Kind of my earlier statement was like time stops for no man. So, as you're pushing through to strive for your goal, realize that don't take time for granted, I could say. So I use the aspect of time stops for no man as I use it apply to when times are rough, but you can also apply it to when times are good as well. So things are going well for you, but remember, it's maybe not last forever. So take advantage of what it is and really live up to what you're experiencing in the moment. And then on the back end, if things are going rough, hey, that's not going to be forever. You're going to overcome it. And my next is obstacles. Everyone's going to face obstacles in life, but obstacles are not a bad thing. Everyone says, "Oh, I'm hitting this, man. This is terrible." But take advantage of that obstacle. Like it's a reset point. What am I capable of? What am I not capable of? Where am I at in life right now? What can I learn? What can I do better? And just take advantage of those obstacles to improve yourself and to be a better person.
Yeah, awesome. That's your teacher. The obstacle's the way.
Obstacles away. Always and strive to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Chris, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for
appreciate it. Yeah, really very much enjoyed the conversation, and I'm just imagining right now, like, wow, would I have the balls to go swim 2,500 miles? You've laid down the gauntlet.
Well, it's doable, so.
It is doable, now we know. Hoo-yah. All right, everyone, thanks very much for listening. Super appreciate your time. Chris and I do, and we know that that there's lots more work to do, so it's time for you to get back to work. Stay focused, do your training, and we'll see you next time. Hoo-yah. Hey, this is Mark Devine. Thanks very much for watching the Unbeatable Mind podcast on YouTube. You can also find the podcast at iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, and unbeatablemind.com/podcasts. Be sure to check out the new episode released every week. Hoo-yah.